Thank you so much for rejoining us. It's still AM today on Osrc television. Few hours to the governorship election in Ondo State. But of course, before tomorrow, a lot has happened. And heading into tomorrow, we also expect that a lot will happen as in terms of deployment, in terms of the presence of security agencies we're likely to see in nooks and crannies of Ondo State. But we'll put all of that to perspective this morning on the program as we have um, uh, part of the group that will be monitoring this election, the build up to this election, and those that will also be monitoring the election itself, and of course what would happen after the election. We have the program manager of Impact Development Initiative, Abiodun Banjoko, joining us on the program this morning. Good morning. Thanks so much for having us.
And good morning. Great to be here.
Yes, you're in Ondo State, I believe, for the election, rightly. So just yesterday, INEC distributed sensitive election materials to the 18 local government areas. You were part of that process. You monitored or observed in a way. Tell us about what you saw on that.
Yes, I think strategically, most of these times we see INEC deploy some of these sensitive materials a day to the elections, most likely Friday. But surprisingly, we saw that they decided to move this on Thursday. But I think basically, they monitor the terrain and observe the need to get some of these sensitive materials to the rack earlier in time so as not to have issues around logistics and taking these materials to the polling unit. So I probably around 12:30, 1 o'clock, we had seen that all the sensitive material had left the CBN headquarters to the various local governments in the state. And I think the latest update that INEC rightly said was about they've confirmed that 13 of those materials have arrived their various destinations. But we are quite worried why some of these materials have yet to arrive, knowing that they left approximately over 12 hours now and it's still not delivered. But maybe that may be due to some certain issues of maybe logistical challenges, but hopefully I'm sure the Commission would update us later today with regards the arrival of those materials. I think some of the things we as a society will be doing now is to reach some of our observers in the field across the various local governments to confirm if those LGAs that are yet to arrive have arrived, so that we can now begin to put a bird's eye watch on INEC and draw their attention to some of these issues.
All right, you mentioned civil society organizations, also key part of this whole process, and for Impact Development Initiative, advancing good governance, democratic rights, and what have you in terms of public engagement for us to have a better process. Let's now pedal back to what this election really means, maybe for your organization, taking a look at all of the work you've put in to ensure that you take a look at and of course be able to make informed decision. Tell us about what this election represents. It's an off-cycle election, but for Impact, what does it mean?
Yes, for Impact, I think for us, we've done a lot of initiative around a violence-free elections. One thing we did in Ondo State was to establish the Ondo State Peace and Mediation by Sir Agbo Mishere, as well as the CAN president and the chairman of the Islamic Commission. So this committee has been going on advocacy visits with critical stakeholders in the election, the candidates, the party chieftains, electoral stakeholders holistically, to ensure that we have a peaceful process in Ondo State. And in the build-up to some of those interventions that they've undertaken, which led to the hosting of KDI hosted the Ondo State Peace and Security Summit a couple of months ago, where we had the state commandant as well as the commissioner of police leading that intervention that we did. All we're just trying to push is to ensure we have a violence-free and a peaceful elections. Ondo citizens should be given the freedom to pick and choose who governs them for the next 4 years. And I think a peaceful process simply shows a strong democratic institution in Ondo State.
All right, you mentioned that last month or some months ago you hosted the Peace, is it called now?
Yeah, Peace and Security Summit.
Peace and Security Summit, yes. And now we are just a day to the election. Would you say the participants, the political parties, the candidates and all of that are keeping to the terms of this summit?
Yes, I think everyone wants a peaceful process. No one wants casualties during the elections. We cannot, and I think Nigeria has transitioned to the space where we conduct elections and we hear individuals losing their lives because we conduct elections. Surprisingly, when we observed the Ondo elections, there were some statistical analysis and prehistorical history data that shows that the election was quite going to be violent. But due to some of these interventions that we also took and engaged in Edo, we saw that the election was very peaceful and quite peaceful. We did not hear any issue of violence or loss of life. Aside that one incident where a police officer lost his life during a clash at the airport in Edo State. But we know that Ondo citizens are very informed people. I don't think that we would experience any form of violence in Ondo State. I think it's very important for the electoral umpire to ensure their neutrality in this election, as well as the security agencies in these elections, to douse tension and appease the people that yes, it's your choice that reflects the outcome of the results for the election.
So for all of the engagement that your organization has been about for this election process, what has been the focus before we head into tomorrow's the D-Day tomorrow? What has been the focus for this long term of monitoring the process in the state?
Yes, I think the focus was just to understand the pre-election environment and some of these communities in Ondo State, particularly the riverine areas that are hard to reach. So this was brought to the attention of the Commission and during the quarterly consultative meeting in Abuja, the headquarters, knowing that we identified some of these communities and brought it to the attention to the Commission that these are the areas that will be hard to reach. Vehicles might not be able to reach it, so you have to come up with alternative voter apathy and avoid violence, because once material do not arrive, certain communities, voters tend to see this as you are trying to suppress them from voting. You are trying to reduce the number of votes coming out of those local governments. So these are some of the things that we drew to the attention of the Commission, as well as the security agencies, mapping out certain hotspot areas that we were able to track. During the long-term tracking period, we noticed that Ondo was actually quite peaceful. There was not really any issue of relating to election violence during the process. There were just very few and minute issues, but those issues were actually drawn to the attention of the security agencies. When we had the technical sessions with all the key security agencies, we brought them in, presented some of these data and some of our preliminary findings to tell them that these are the areas that you need to focus and deploy more of your officers to avoid certain issues ahead of the elections.
All right, from your engagement at the Edo elections and probably some other elections in Nigeria, which of these, from the experiences there, what are those areas that you think INEC need to improve on, especially when it comes to this Ondo State election?
Yes, I think election is always a serious problem, and that was what led to civil society releasing a joint statement during the Ondo election. We saw a process in Edo where collation of results were called into question, particularly in local government areas where a large number of votes were expected, and the closest local government results came in second to the last and last in Edo. It's the local government that is closest to the state collation, and it came in last, and we saw where there were questions around manipulation of figures and data, and the question of the integrity of the collation process needs to be as transparent as possible. Every political party should be given freedom and access to investigate and query certain results that are being presented in front of during the state collation. For instance, in Edo, we saw where a political party raised queries around results being announced. And we've said this to INEC: exercise your power of the 7 days to review the election before announcing the election results. But INEC still decides to go ahead to announce results despite objections raised during collation. The point of objection raised is once you raise an objection, they should go back to objections and still go ahead and announce the results. So there's actually no point for political parties that are unhappy or displeased with certain components of the election to raise objections. So some of the conversations we are beginning to have is, you have, according to the Constitution, you have a power to pause the collation process and investigate towards a 7-day period before you announce. But INEC, I don't know, maybe it's the terrain of the country or the nature of, maybe they feel that if there's unrest, there will be instability, and they just go ahead to announce. But you have this power, exercise it.
Because I was about saying that, do you think that could work in a situation like Nigeria, where everybody, is anxious to know what's the outcome? Even when the collation drags to like 2 days, people are beginning to ask, what is it?
Yes.
So in a situation like ours, in a climate like ours, do you think it's possible for INEC to be that patient? Or what can they do to avert pandemonium on the streets while they do their job?
Yes, I think it might not drag the whole 7 days. You have heard objections. Just take a couple of hours, review some of these objections, and come. If you now notice that you need to do further investigation, you communicate, release a press statement, inform the people that these are the issues, and we need to investigate before we announce a final conclusion of the results. But not just announcing the results and expecting every candidate to, if you are displeased, go to court.
For KDI, how informed are the voters in Ondo State from all of what you've gathered?
Yes, from our pre-election assessment, we conducted some research, and quite impressive. We saw that citizens of Ondo State are quite informed. I think some of our data showed well above 65% of Ondo State citizens are well informed with regards electoral information. I think people are very vastly interested in the upcoming elections. I think citizens know who they want to vote for. But all these parties have really come out to fight for this position in this election. And I think the citizens have the right to decide who they want to rule them in the next 4 years. And one important thing they need to know is if they decide to sell their votes on election day, the individuals are definitely not reap the benefits of a developmental democracy. And it's important they know that they should vote and vote competence and vote an individual that would make Ondo State a developing state across Nigeria.
We've seen some other organizations who have raised concerns about vote buying. Does KDI also have such concern in this election?
Yes, vote buying it's a concern in this election. We've seen that in previous election, and some of the challenge that we've observed is some of this vote buying do not take place in the polling units. It takes place around the polling units. And when we bring this to the attention of the security agencies and the commission, they say according to the law, once this is taking place in the polling unit is when they have the legal backing to interfere. But some of these illegal activities are happening outside of the polling unit or around the polling unit. And that is where I think some of the work we are beginning to do is now engaging the anti-corruption agencies, and we paid advocacy to the Independent Corrupt Practice Commission, ICPC, when we arrived in Ondo State earlier in the week. And they highlighted that yes, they will be on ground. They will deploy some of their officers on ground to deter vote buying. But the issue is they don't have the security agencies are deploying about 32,000, 28,000 personnel on ground. But the ICPC and EFCC combined cannot deploy up to 10,000. So that is a challenge, and they cannot be everywhere. So they just do strategic mapping and just deploy where they feel that some of these things can be deterred. But they've
yes. Some of the things I would like us to look into is the participation of people with disabilities. Yesterday we hosted a show, and their representative was saying that some of the reasons why people living with disabilities do not get to participate in elections in Nigeria is because unconducive environment and among others anyway, and lack of preference for them when they get to the polling. So did Kempa do anything in the process of preparing for these elections so that INEC or stakeholders will provide conducive environment for people living with disabilities and probably enlighten other electorates to give them preference?
Yes, I think as part of our engagement at Kimpact, we highlighted some of those issues and informed citizens that persons living with disability should be given priority marking during voting process. I think this was actually brought to the attention of the Commission, which definitely over the years the Commission has also ensured that some of all these materials that persons with disability would require at the polling units are made available. Nigerians do not have that sense of belonging, that persons with disability should be given priority status. I think that is a little bit more information we as civil society needs to do more to educate and inform citizens more about that. These persons, the elderly, the women that are pregnant should be given priority at the voting area. But the lack of patience of individuals having been on the queue for so long under hot sun and intense conditions, some people lose their patience. But I think it's a little bit of more of education that even INEC, citizens, political parties, CSOs needs to do and inform more citizens.
So let me say in summary that not much of a difference is expected tomorrow. Is that?
No, there's going to be a bit of difference, but we would see where the tension come into play. That all those education can just go outside the window.
You mentioned that about over 60% of all of these surveys you gathered, it shows that voters in Ondo State are well informed about what their choices are and all of that. But there's also the concern of voter apathy, regardless of being informed. It's one thing, trends and patterns, the percentages, the figures of how electorates have turned out for election in Ondo State. A lot of persons say there's more that still needs to be done. About 1.7 million voters now, INEC has been cleared that they can participate in the process. Is the voter apathy still a concern? Why should, perhaps to speak to the conscience of the people, why should anybody sit back in this election?
I think, to be fair, no citizen should sit back in any election. I think we've seen since President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came into power in 2023, we've seen some of his economic policies and how some of this has transitioned and impacted the lives of each and every Nigerian. And I think it's our responsibility, each and every one of us, to come out and choose those that will speak on our behalf. And electing your governor is someone that can speak to the presidency on your behalf. And I think you being deciding not to exercise your franchise, and whoever emerges as a winner and you keep complaining does not solve your problem. You have to come out and elect someone that will speak your voice and speak your opinion and bring ample development to your state. And I think you rightly said, voter apathy is really, really a problem. I think with regards safety on its own, I think the police have assured that all the polling units to be secured, and approximately 4 security personnel who will be assigned to each polling unit. We know there are about 3,933 polling units, so 4 security personnel to each polling unit. They've assured us, so there will be strong presence of security personnel in the polling units. Also, strategic locations, the military will also be in strategic locations around the state. So if citizens are afraid that violence might erupt, I think I just want to assure them that it's going to be a peaceful process. It's just for us to come out and exercise our franchise. But one important part of the problem why we see voter turnout statistically looking reduced is because our voter register has not actually been clean. So we know that there are persons that have actually relocated out of the country, there are persons that have passed on, are still on that voter register. So I think once we have a clean voter register, we will now begin to see a true reflection of voter turnout in there.
Is KD also pushing for that, or CSOs pushing for that?
Yes, there are CSOs currently working towards pushing up to cleaning the voter register data. But I think the commission is also a bit wary or restrictive in giving access to their data to certain individuals because of they're afraid of it might be compromised to an extent. But we are having that conversation at INEC at the national level. So let's clean our voter register. In Nigeria currently, we say we have 98 million people on that voter register. We don't have 98 million people on voter register currently.
All right.
So we have 98 million people, but we don't have the 98 million
to come out and vote.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to the cleanup of the voters register. We responded to a question earlier. You mentioned that there's going to be the presence of security agents, and everybody can be assured that there will be peace. That one of the reasons why people develop apathy for voting in Nigeria is because the election day is heavily militarized, like the heavy presence of security agents, around polling.
Sure, they even saw the presence of security personnel around the voting area, except maybe when you want to enter. But I think the political actors are responsible. They are responsible. They are to be held accountable because they are the ones that are now making the process look too policed, too militarized in a way. Because if you know this is a gentleman's competition, you don't need to employ political thugs or party members to instill violence. And these are some of the reasons why we have to now the environment is actually safe for voters to come out and vote. But if we are in a climate where people believe that the process is transparent, everybody trusts the process, then you don't have to over militarize or over police the process. But I think it's a learning curve for Nigeria. Seeing how we've started elections from 99 up to date, we see we have been improving. I think there's a lot of education that needs to go into some of all these things to citizens, that elections is not war. Election is not a do or die affair. Elections is a gentleman competition. The best candidate will emerge. And I think another challenge that has also affected apathy is the role INEC has played in the past. I think they have to start building the trust back into the citizens. I think some of the issues that have been flagged is, for instance, in the Edo election, what we did was that we collected the results from the IREF and compared the data with what INEC announced, and we saw some discrepancies in about 3 local government areas. These are issues. But we've raised this at INEC, and they said that they have mechanisms they check at certain ward level, at certain ward level, at certain level. At this election, we are going to be doing the same thing, and we are going to be deploying observers to all the polling units.
We'll come to that. We'll come to the election day engagement for KDI and the civil society engagement very shortly. But build up to this election. I also know that you did a thing about monitoring the media space in terms of how information, communication is playing a part in the narrative heading into this election, misinformation and all of that. What did KDI spot in that space, and how dangerous is it heading into this election otherwise?
Yes, disinformation and disinformation is a powerful tool, is a new trend that emerged during the 2019 elections, and the weaponization of information targeting specific individuals and candidates is now a new dynamics in the political landscape. I think in Ondo State, there's been a lot of hate speech, rather by certain political actors to incite supporters and incite voters. It's quite worrisome because as it is now, there's just no solid law to hold offenders of hate speech or misinformation. But I think it's quite troubling that some political actors do not know that some of their words can have influence and lead to certain action. That it's very important they control what they see and how that will impact.
Now let's Program Manager KDI, Mr. Banjo, let's push to the election day engagement for your organization, for civil society organizations, as to what exactly will you be on the lookout for on election, and what has been your plan for that D-Day. You've talked about all of the processes you've gone through pre-election. For that election day itself, what's the plan, and what civil society organization will look towards?
Okay, thank you. I think for KDI, one important thing we will be observing is the early commencement of polls. That is some of the things that we'll be looking out for. And we'll be looking around issues around logistics, arrival of materials on time. Those are some of the key things we'll be looking out. Compliance of looking at also the gender dynamics, where gender mainstreamed during the election process. That are some of the key things we will be looking at in the earliest commencement of polls. I think during the meeting we'll also release some of our preliminary statements to some of the things we've observed so far on election day before close of poll.
How will you be doing this?
Yeah, so we have deployed about 3,933 observers to all the polling units. We have also deployed 203 ward observers to all the 303 wards across 18 local governments. So we will also be monitoring all the polling units. We'll also be tracking the results in real time from the polling units and from the IREF. So we are going to be implementing three components of our project, which is the NEVA. We'll also be tracking the election violence and the election security environment. We'll also be tracking the results management component of the process. But before the election, we'll also be tracking the campaign finance component of some of the projects that we're also doing.
Okay. In all of this, and from previous observations that you have made, how much of impact, has your activities have in the implementation or execution of elections in Nigeria?
Yes, I think the instance in the
It
it will be a heavy sun. It will be a heavy sun in Ondo State.
All right, so interesting. We'll be looking to ensure that, of course, we also monitor the process right here from our own end. But as we gradually close this conversation, Mr. Pedro Banjofu, you're on the ground now, and of course, I also understand that you'll be doing some form of post-election engagement. So, what would that be, and how critical is it going forward for the process?
Yes, I think some of our post-election engagements would look at bringing suggestions and seeing how some of this feedback from stakeholders would help us engage reform processes. For instance, some of this feedback can be with regards maybe amending the Electoral Act again. And as a member of the Technical Committee on Constitutional Reform and Electoral Reform, is also working with the chairman of the National Assembly on electoral matters, Honorable Bayo Balogun and Senator Abiodun Sharaf. So we've always constantly been engaging them and components. We take that to them and engage to them and call for reform and amendment of certain laws that can help better the process.
From your monitoring, what issues are likely to also be at the table, or where you monitored campaign financing, for example, and you also saw the trends as to how things will be taken without recourse to political parties. How well as we had parties also communicated perhaps the manifesto to the electorate and the reception at this time?
To be fair, I think the political parties have not. I think, for instance, that will maintain all the roads in Ondo State, for instance, that is policy driven, and you know that the mandate of that commission is to ensure that all the roads in Ondo State are good, rather than saying I will just do one particular road. I think that is just some of the issues that we've seen.
So how soon do you think Nigerians will come to embrace or call politicians to be more policy driven than project driven in their campaigns?
I think it's going to be a hectic challenge for us. For instance, I think we've seen the heavy weaponization of poverty in the country. The recent economic policies that the APC government has taken, or the Bola Tinubu administration has taken, has actually had an impact in the currency's purchasing power value, and has also contributed to the rising poverty issue in Nigeria. According to the statistic globally, we have about 80-something million Nigerians living in poverty. So I think we need the economy to resurrect first. Once the economy starts getting back to its natural position, and we know that the Bola Tinubu administration has promised that it's a hard pain for now, but we'll see the result in the long term. But once the economic situation in the country starts improving, we'll now begin to see people start making informed and rational decisions.
All right, let's close this conversation, because I'm looking at KDI, and I say youth focused organization. The youths, I also looked at the figures of the breakdown of the votes and the voters. Students in the category of youths also have a very huge figure when it comes to those who are expected to vote in this election. Youths, you think our youths will be going out for this election?
We believe so. We are optimistic that they will come out and turn up. I think the future of Nigeria is in the hands of the youth. They need to come out and exercise their franchise. And I think a closed mouth is a closed destiny. If they continue to remain silent, they will continue to their voice will not be heard. They will not be given opportunity to express and given their involvement in the political space. I think their involvement is paramount to the decision of the upcoming election in Ondo State, and I think they need to begin to get involved. I think even not for them, they need to start fighting for the future of themselves and the future of their children. So their participation and involvement in the process needs to commence now.
Okay, that's for the youth. But
Yes.
what about women? Because according to records, it shows that women participation in elections, especially in the general elections, the previous one is doing.
Yeah, definitely. I think in previous election turnout, we see that women tend to have an influence in the sway of votes. Approximately within 45 to 48% of women definitely turn out to cast their vote. I think yes, the role of women cannot be oppressed or cannot be overemphasized. I think their presence in the political landscape is also quite important, and we understand that at the nation, at the holistic space, there's a decline of women political participation in Nigeria, and I think at Kimpa, that's why some of our interventions are also involved around capacity building for women political leaders, to ensure that some of these capacity were embedded in them to be able to contest and campaign for political offices going forward.
Mr. Abiodun Banjoko, Program Manager at Kimpact Development Initiative, thank you so much for coming on the program to share insights with us and perspective relating to this election. I'm looking at your site. Your website now says 14 hours, 47 minutes, and the seconds keep ticking to the election. Wish you all the best in this task.
Thank you very much for having me.
We'll take a break now. We'll be back with more. Stay with us.
Leadership is not a package where you take it and say, here it is, I give you the package. Leadership comes from you live, what have you acquired in terms of your training, your experience, your track record, and all that. And what I'm Leadership is not here it